Hello, this is Pat Cahill from Pat Cahill Metalworks, and today we're going to be setting a odd shaped stone. This is a Labradorite that is a little bird. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe with some. There you go. So we're going to set that, and we're going to make a little brooch out of it. So let's see how that goes. First thing you want to do, and I think I've done this before, but we want to figure out the length of bezel wire we need. And the best thing to do is to take a piece of tape, or I use this paper from Avery because I cut it off from labels when I'm sending out. So I make mail labels and then cut it off. And use the scraps for this. So you see I'm just going around, making sure I get into the indentations. Tape would work, but you got to use the right tape. Don't use any tape that would stretch in any way, like electrical tape. That would not be good. Come out with the wrong amount. So when I get to the end, I just put a little thumbnail mark right there. Bring it back and cut it off. Check it one more time, and then I'll know the size or length of bezel wire I will need to set this odd shaped stone. So that looks good. So I take that off and we put that anywhere, or just peel it off when we're done making the bezel. So right here I'm going to use this bezel wire, fine silver, and I'll mark where I need to cut it and trim the edges, get them nice and flat. So I'm looking for a scribe right here. Just try not to waste any. I might use it for some very small stone. That's that. Alright, now you can snip off the longer pieces at the end, and the rest I will be, well, I can't see. The rest I'll just take care of in my miter jig. Yeah, that's too small to snip off. So I'll put it in my miter jig, align it with our scribe mark, and we'll get that nice and flush. Okay, so we'll move our camera over here. You see that? And it's just a matter of filing it down. Well, this is quite a bit more than I need, so I'll just trim it with some pliers. And then we'll file it down and sand it so we get a nice 90-degree flat surface. So when both go together, they can go together nice and flush. Okay, so I'll do that on the other surface, and I'll get ready to solder these together, and I'll bring it back. Okay, so we have the piece cut out, nice perpendicular ends, and for soldering what we want to do is take each end, bring it over 90 degrees, and then form our D with it. You see how you just bring it around and form a D. Now you want to take your time on this part. You want these things to match as best as possible. Match really, really well. And you can see how that's pretty well matched. I like to bring it down so that it's, push it down in so that it's nice and straight across. Okay, that looks good. You see that? So now we're going to bring it over to our soldering board and put it, the seam right on top of a chip of solder. Add some liquid flux flow the solder. It'll come right up to the top. Eat the whole piece. Now this is fine silver, so it won't turn. There you go. I don't know if you saw that. Hopefully you did. And I'll put that in the pickle. It really doesn't need much, and I'll be right back. Okay, so first thing we want to do is round out the bezel using a ring mandrel. Take out those right angles I put on the sides. We want to hit this softly with either a rawhide mallet or a nylon tipped mallet. I just like to start out with a nice circle, and we can work from there. So with this, what you do is sort of, first off, find out where your seam is, and you would want that not on, I'm going to put that right down here on the belly of the bird. And then we just sort of stretch it around. Use our fingers to sort of semi-form it. Push it down in there. And then, so we have it semi-formed here. Now we want to just take, this is a burnisher. You can use this for pushing over the bezel too. But what I'm doing here is putting it up. Let me get rid of that. What I'm doing is pushing it right up to the bottom edge, all the way around, and taking off any of the slack so that I can use that where it's not fitting right now. So you're not going to be able to see this. I need to use a little bit of strength here to get it around in the places where it needs to be. Okay, that's pretty good right there. We have our bezel that fits the bird, and you can take a lot more time doing this, and I'm going to work a little bit off camera because I can see I have it, see it's up and down. We'll take care of that because this is why I made, or I used bezel that was too high for the stone. I can now take that down and flatten it out so it's nice and flat all the way across. But again, take your time with this. Try to get it as matching, as perfect as possible. If it's not perfect, I mean totally perfect, that's okay. You want it to do is, you want it to be as good as possible though. So let me get back to you when I'm ready for the next step. Okay, so we have the bezel. I sanded it on both sides so it sits nice and flat and should fit the bird quite nicely. You can look on the back and see how it follows the contours of the stone and fits just perfectly. So it's a little loose, but you want it a little loose. And I want to check now the height of it. Again, it could come down a little bit, and I might do that. You want to show off as much of the stone as possible. You really want the bezel just to start to fold over, just where it starts to curve up or curve over, so you can grip that. I don't think I'd take off much of this actually. This is such an odd shaped stone. You really, I think I need that to really hold the stone in place. So the next part of this is going to be to put it back on this and think about what we're going to do for our, what's this bird going to sit on? It could sit on a nice little, it's going to sit on a little log. like that, or I might go for a little bit bigger. No, I think that. So how did I make that? I tried this out beforehand. I got some 10 gauge wire, and I'll get that and show you how go about making that little branch for our bird. Okay, so here's our 10 gauge wire, and I'm gonna just first off round off one of the edges. Now this wire is probably longer than we're gonna need, almost certainly. And so I'm going to use this side. We'll cut that off later. You can see. And let's back it away. Here we go. Now I want to sort of rough it up a little bit, but to get sort of an organic look. Part of it is take a hammer, sort of get a flatter look here. Okay, because one side we want almost totally flat. And we'll take the pin, and the other side we want more organic and not just flat looking. But the first part is done. Flatten out both sides. And just a little bit of help would be grips here. And what I'm going to do, get them in there. And what I want to do is I want to start to rough up one of these sides. And this is like a rasp file. It's not, it's meant to put a lot of, I want to get a little bark texture, a little bit of interest to this piece. So you can go take this rasp. I call it a rasp, I think it is a rasp. It's a very coarse file. I don't need to be really exacting here. It's just random organic look. Put in some hammer marks. That's what it's going to be looking like. Maybe give it more of a curve. That will be our surface on this side. Can you see that? Hopefully. And on the other side, what we'll want to do, and again, let's hold it in our clamp. Steady it on the block. Now I want to take this down by sanding it. I could file it first, but either way. So I can get a flat surface here. I can use that to, when we solder on the pin, for the brooch. Yeah, that looks good. Now I probably won't have room to put on my mark, my maker's mark, but I can certainly put on 925, and probably this is the time if you want to do it. Looks good, even with that little slip. Okay. So we're going to be attaching this to here. We're going to get rid of quite a bit of it. Much too big right now. I can do that now, so let's just grab some cutters. Determine how long we want it. I think about there. It's always best to err on the side of longer than you might think. Easy to take it off. It's not so easy to put it back on. Okay. I think that'll make a cute little brooch, little pin. Interesting. I'll have to round off this side, which I will do. And so the next step is to, let me get ready for the next step, is to put a base on our bird. Okay, so we're ready to solder the bezel onto the back plate. I'll add some flux. I just found a little scrap piece of 22 gauge sterling silver, which I will use. And in this case, I'm going to put the solder on the inside. If it will come off of my tweezers. And if you have that problem, basically just sand them a little bit, or polish them, or sand, just okay. And if you still have that problem, then you still have that problem. I'll just set them in there. Then I'll snuggle them up close to the edge. Maybe one more. Okay. And yeah. Snuggle them up close to the edge and go for the, go for corners. Okay, that looks good. Ready to fire it. Sometimes when you first start the flux itself, let me get it on my turntable here. Yeah. Sometimes when you first start, the flux will bubble a little bit and will move your solder chip. So watch that. I want to get the heat going towards the outer part, so that that will be the hotter part, and that will be where the solder will flow. Okay, I think we got it. Just into the pickle, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, so I have the bezel soldered onto the back plate, and the next thing I'm going to do is saw all around the edges and clean up as much as possible, put it flush. I'm going to leave a little tab down here so that it's easier to solder onto our perch for our bird. So let me do that off camera, and I don't think you need to see me soldering this whole piece. I'm not soldering, sawing this whole piece. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I've sawed off the edges and made them flush with the bezel and cleaned them up a little bit. Just a little bit. I left this little tab here so that will be easier to solder onto our twig or branch. And I'm ready for the next part. So the next part would be probably to solder this, but what I'm going to do next is to form our pin. And so to do that, I'm going to use some 18 gauge wire and put this in. All right, let me. Okay, so the next step I'm going to do is try to make a pin for the back. And to do that, I'm going to use this 18 gauge wire. And I'm just going to start out by making with my brown pliers the loop, small loop. This will form the tension I need for the pin. So that's, and I always use more than you're going to, always start out with a lot more here than you're going to need in the end. So from that, I'll cut it off. Again, a lot longer than I'm going to use. And that will form my pin. I'll straighten this out and put a point on the end where, when I figure out exactly how long I want it to be. And the next step I want to do is to make the other component of this. So we again start out with the round pliers, and I make it just a loop. And with that loop, I squish it in. You can just squish it all the way in. Okay. And don't worry if it comes like this, we'll just pull that out. And now this is going to be turned over. This is a little tough for you. You can use pliers, flat pliers. And there you go. And this will form the piece. Oops, I've lost my. Well, this will form the piece that where the pin will go underneath. So we'll have the pin like this. I don't know if you can see that. No, the hands are in the way. So we'll have the pin, and it will go and it will hold underneath here. So the next step is I really need to figure out where I want this pin and how long it needs to be. I don't want it just on this part right here, the branch that the bird sits on. I actually want to do it so that it either comes this way, where one component is on the branch, and it'll probably be the pin component, and the other component will be on the back of the bird, and that will be this component. So I need to figure out how much I want. And it's going to go like that. I'm going to, yeah, just about like that. So I'll have this component I'll solder to here, and this component I'll solder to here. So let me get that all set up, and I'll be back. Okay, so put a little flux where we want to solder the branch onto the bird. And I'll put just a little chip of solder on the edge there. Position my branch the way I want it. That looks good. And warm up our piece to get ready for soldering. Okay, and there it has flowed. So I'll put that in the pickle and I'll get back to you.